Ammar, hi, how are you?
Man, I'm good. What's going on? There's nothing happening in the off season, no?
No, but I am super excited because we get to judge finally with no
Whoa.
consequence
Oh,
the,
wait.
the top five drivers of F1 2025. And luckily, Ammar, we are not going to be doing it alone. Mr. Kunal Shah, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's time for Tired GP, literally. My daughter's still awake, 10:45-ish time, Indian Standard Time here. Typical off-season break that I end up taking in the tropics. But
Ah,
I'm doing well. Good to be back. Thank you for having me. Good to see Amar there.
It is
finally.
good to see you, Kunal. They told me that they needed somebody to hold you accountable. So today's rankings is what I'm going to do. You have the expertise, but I am the vibes guy apparently now on this show. So, we're gonna have some fun. But good to have you.
You guys have no
Likewise.
idea how prophetic that statement is. Um, you might be wondering why I'm in a dressing gown. Well, these guys, one's in Los Angeles, the other one's in Mumbai. I'm the one in cold London, so I thought I'm going to wear my dressing gown. And the second reason is we have already got a top five. Okay, it's already set. These two don't know what the order is, which
Oh
is
boy.
uh, which is all the more exciting for me. But what you'll find is that I was right down the middle. You guys were the outliers. So I'm in my dressing gown because I'm going to put my feet up and watch you two fight. It's going to be
Oh,
great.
excellent.
Um,
Nothing like the British doing. It's never been done before in history. No.
yeah, it's true. Literally, I have divided and conquered. Um,
Okay, let's
okay,
go. What do you have?
so quick ground rules first of all. This is how we've calculated the top five. All three of us independently came up with our top five drivers of F1 2025. I've treated each one of us like a Grand Prix. So if you were whoever Kunal ranked number one, or whoever Amar ranked number one, or what I did, gets 25 points, and then we use the F1 point system down to five. So number one got 25, number five got 10. I then just added them all up, and you got a championship score, the only championship that really counts, I think.
Of
Um,
course, yes.
uh, so we're going to start with actually not even the top five. We are going to start with, as Amara wanted to put it, outside looking in. So not
OLI.
OLI, correct. So this is one driver that was knocking on the door of the top five,
Oh boy.
but didn't quite make it. Um, it is, of course, Carlos Sainz. And
Really?
yes, it is. And Kunal, I'm going to throw to you because um, he was absent from all of our rankings other than yours. Um,
Yes.
so
This is
make your
interesting.
case, Kunal. Why did young Carlos Sainz deserve to be in the top five drivers of F1 2025? Go.
Because for all the drivers who changed teams, he yet again seemed like the one who could adapt the best, right? So we saw what happened to Lewis Hamilton, what happened to Esteban Ocon. We saw how Carlos Sainz struggled in the first half of the season, and I remember, everyone was like, "Look, Alex Albon has, he's able to tackle the Carlos Sainz challenge," and then Carlos kept working at it, turned it around with his team. Williams gave him everything, and I mean, I have this on record. Williams literally gave him everything to settle down. And then once he did, he's turned it around. And look at that season. I mean, to do what he did in that Williams, I believe that was top five worthy in all the drivers on the grid. 21 drivers on the grid, definitely my top five.
Oof, that is one hell of an argument. Omar? What have you got?
It is, yeah. I was gonna say I actually kind of agree with Kunal. I mean, in the end, I agree. Not necessarily putting him in the top five, but where you have him, which is outside looking in. If there was a driver I would put in right outside of the top five, right, it would be Carlos. And I'm actually not surprised that you put him there, Kunal, because I've argued that he's had the better season than Hamilton has, and I don't think there's any argument for that, right? I mean, you would have normally thought of putting Lewis either in this spot or maybe above it. And the reality is, Williams told you at the beginning of 2025 that they were not paying attention to 2025. Ergo, there was no expectations whatsoever. So the fact that he had two podiums and, he has had more memorable races, I should say, in a positive sense, right? Yeah. Come on, Shez, you're not going to get me on that. That's an easy one to agree on.
So you think he should be in the top five then?
I don't think he should be in the top five, but outside looking in, as you said, is fair. I mean, we're not that far off.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, listen, I'll tell you why.
It's also warming up.
Yeah. I can't believe we started on this one. Look, I'll tell you why I don't agree. Look, I agree that he had a great season, 2 podiums and a William, brilliant. But he got those at a point when, for some reason, the car, although as you say, Ammar, hadn't been developed, the team had suddenly come together, and from an execution point of view, they were doing better. Now, you also brought up the point that Williams started to gravitate towards Carlos Sainz. I think Carlos did a lot of that, and he can get credit for that. But the team did start gravitating towards him, and things started to come to him. That's a very Carlos Sainz trait. I totally agree with you. He's the great adapter. I think I've heard you call him that before.
Yeah.
But the reason I can't put him in my top 5 is the first half of the season. And if you're taking all caveats out, that first, and it wasn't even the first half, it's the first 2/3 of the season where he got absolutely walloped by Alex Albon, to the point that he, even with 2 podiums and heroics in races in the latter half of the season, he still wasn't able to overcome Alex Albon in the points. And that, for me, is why I agree that Sainz he's a good 6, although I think Fernando Alonso is probably gonna is probably gonna try and wrestle him for that. But I think, yeah, as a top 6 contender, yes, definitely. Top 5, I think, was probably pushing it. Although I enjoyed your defense; it was very robust.
Thank you. No, I think if anything, a Williams being able to handle 2 quick drivers is where the challenge is going to be for them. They cannot. Can you imagine? They had a season, like you just said, Sherry, right? That Albon for the first 2/3 of the season was quick, and where was he in the last third? Nowhere, right? And they need to make sure that both their drivers are firing on all cylinders, and they're not just focusing on one over the other. But just the turnaround, just had he done this with any other team, I would have probably not put him in the top 5. That Williams last year and the year before that, whenever James Vowles showed up, and they didn't have, they couldn't show up for testing on time, right? They had Logan Sargent. They were relying on paid drivers. And for a team not developing the 2025 car, for a team focusing early on 26, like you said, the team came together. And I believe a large part of that coming together has to be credited to Carlos as well. We've seen this, that every team that he has joined has only done better, whether it was, the likes of Renault, McLaren, Ferrari, and now it's the Williams resurrection. But, top 5, top 6, pretty close, I'd say, right?
Yeah, or you could say that Carlos is very lucky in the moves that he makes.
Or maybe Ferrari should have kept him, no?
Maybe Ferrari should have kept him, and maybe they would have gotten a win out of their problems. But I'm eager to know, did any of the Ferrari drivers make it to anyone's top 5s? If so, if not. But
wow.
That's
okay. That is a good segue. Okay, let's move on to number 5. And honestly, I can't believe this one. Number 5, Charles Leclerc. I don't genuinely, I don't get it. And Kunal, again, I am going to have to defer to you, sir, because you're the only one that didn't put him in your top 5. I must have an answer.
You know, I that's the mystery. Not me putting in the top five, but 7 years in that Ferrari, right? Yes, he's driven well. Yes, he's, entertains us on the radio, etc., etc. But beyond the point, 7 years in that Ferrari, and it's if you go back to season two, season three, and season seven, the issues are the same. Doesn't matter who the team principal is, doesn't matter who the race engineer is, right? So for me, yes, he pulled out some really spectacular performances, right? But for a Leclerc, who Max Verstappen has rated as one of the best drivers himself, right? In that Ferrari, to still be struggling and still be struggling on the same issues. Okay, and we often say this in, lots of management mantras that you're there. Don't make the same mistake again, right? But the same cannot be said of Ferrari and Leclerc. So yes, spikes in performances that have come, but with a lot of heartburn, with a lot of question marks, with a lot of, like, why on earth are they even racing in 2025, like so on. But so he didn't make it to my top five. I think there were better options for me, at least.
Is the reason why he didn't make it then down to the team and not him?
I would say yes, it's down to the team, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But I would also, so actually, that's also the reason why he didn't make it to the top five. With the level of experience and talent he's got, the kind of backing, political backing, he is still the blue-eyed boy at Ferrari. For him to still not be able to turn it around, maybe Ferrari cannot be turned around. Maybe teams are too big enough now for, people to walk in like the way Michael Schumacher would and, sort of just steer the ship in a different direction. But that's also one of the things, right? That he's not able to do the mark as, let's take Red Bull as an example. In the whole power struggle situation, they still were in the fight till the last race of the season, right? And a lot of people are crediting it to Max. Of course, we'll never know how true that is, the most expensive sensor in the car and so on and so forth. But, for me, Leclerc is equally one of the most expensive sensors in that Ferrari, if nothing else.
But I mean, I would argue that if you look at his performance, Hungary, for example, right? I mean, that was him leading 2/3 of the race until they had to, well, that's when we learned about LICO in the sense that everybody did. I mean, Ferrari have given us these gifts over the years where they've managed to do just enough to get us excited and then have no way to finish the job, whether it's starting 2022 hot and then fading away, completely fading away, whether it's, having a really good 2024 season, deciding to change whatever 90%, 95, 97, pick your number, that whatever Fred Vasseur said to make all of us happy. And then come up with a total dud of a car. I mean, their season was done after China. They weren't even doing any development. I think they stopped doing that in early April. I want to say probably was the first week of April. So I mean, I was gonna argue with you, but I actually agree with you. This is all down to Ferrari because
To
you just have to look
Ferrari.
at what
To
it is all down
Ferrari.
to
Yeah,
Ferrari.
so not
Yes,
not
because
Charles though.
not
So,
Charles
so why
himself.
so
Of
why
course not.
so why does
Because
Charles not
wait,
deserve to be in the top five? That's the thing I don't
because
understand.
look at what he's doing to the seven-time champion there in the other car. I mean, we just got done talking
Amar,
about Carlos Sainz
Amar,
coming on strong, and Lewis had
wait. You're
so.
making Kunal's argument, which I don't understand.
I am I'm
I
saying I'm
don't.
agreeing with it, but I don't agree that he shouldn't be in the top five because he has given. I mean, nobody would argue that for the car that he was given, Charles has outperformed the car by miles. I don't even think you can put Max in that category because Red Bull did continue to develop the car and McLaren seeded to develop the car much earlier. So there is a little bit of delta that's caused by that sort of overlap, and we'll see what 2026 means for Red Bull. Right, we'll find out how much they've sort of placed their eggs in that one basket, so to speak. But I think for a Ferrari that how many weekends have we had, Kunal, where you've come on and said that Ferrari does not deserve to be anywhere close to a sort of a pole start or a front row start or a podium start, and he's done that time and time again. The only thing that's really holding him back is the car. I mean, there's no argument for that, is there, Kunal?
No, no, absolutely. I mean, I think if there's this statement saying, if Max himself said, if I was in the McLaren, I would have wrapped up the title by now. I
Mm-hmm.
think Leclerc would have also been one of those drivers. If Leclerc was in that McLaren, he would have wrapped up the title way before Abu Dhabi.
But the key statement is Max is not saying that if he was in that Ferrari, he would have won the championship.
No one is saying that. Even
Exactly.
Lewis is not saying. He's saying,
And
I'm not even looking forward
and
to 26 now.
and yet, can I just put some numbers to this, right? Because you know how much I love them. So in that car, which was by my reckoning at least, easily the fourth fastest car, which is where they finished in the World Constructors' Championships, but also on super times, they were definitely the fourth fastest car overall this season. Charles Leclerc got 7 podiums. He was nearly 3/10 quicker than statistically the greatest qualifier of all time in the fourth fastest car on the grid. And just to put that into perspective, do you know what they're, because Ammar only seems to deal in start positions, even though I find them irrelevant. Charles's, you know what Charles's average start position was? 5.73, right? That's how bad the car was. Lewis's was 9 over
Oh,
the course
boy.
of the season. That's how, and I don't think we've had this argument already, Omar. I don't think that's because Lewis was driving stupendously badly. I think Charles Leclerc was doing magic with that car. That pole position in Hungary should not have happened. Like, he was the only driver that improved their time in Q3. And to be hounding Lando Norris, putting his championship in danger in Abu Dhabi should not happen. Charles Leclerc is doing things that I heard Mark Hughes saying this on their podcast. I don't listen to it. I just heard it like in the background. But he said that Leclerc in his qualifying lap in Monaco, the section through to back, the two McLaren drivers looked at what Leclerc was doing through to back and asked each other, "Could you do that?" And both of them said, "Nah." I mean, when I'm rating, put the team aside for a second. Look at the equipment that the guy has, what he has been doing year on year on year. Yes, of course, you could say that he should have pushed the team further, that the team should be further ahead with the amount of experience that he now has. But if you just take all of that aside and just look at the season that he has had, how much he has outperformed that car. I mean, I put him second. Amar, you put him second as well.
I did too, and I'd like to have Kunal sort of defend his position a little bit because we've talked around. But I really think that, again, this sort of comes back to when you saw what happened in early 2022. I think that was the best form of racing that you saw in the ground effects era, where I don't think you've seen anything close to that, where there were two guys that really are just identical in so many ways, in the way they drive, in the way they qualify, in the way they push the limits of the rules. I mean, they're both known to kind of do the same thing. And I think we've been robbed of the ability to see that, largely because, you know, the team hasn't given him the kind of car that he deserves. And I think, if anything, Kunal, I'll turn this over to you. I think Charles Leclerc's fault is not his driving. It's his inability to separate himself as a Ferrari fan and think of his career as a Formula One driver. I mean, that is the fairest criticism I would buy of him.
Is Charles Leclerc the new Fernando Alonso without the two world titles? Is he spending most of his prime years as a racer with the wrong team, right? And you know, the reason why I put Carlos ahead of Charles is again for the same reason. For the reason, being that the team with which Carlos pulled those performances off with, you can extend the same, that, well, Leclerc pulled off that performance with that team, which is, look at what Ferrari did. But the very fact that they find themselves, they continue to find themselves in this rut is where I'm like, is Leclerc able to, as a driver, help them get out of it? Where was Leclerc sending all those notes and documents, even if Ferrari is not reading them, right? Or even making noise of these things? And a lot of these issues that we are seeing at Ferrari, especially if you see Ricardo Adami, Lewis Hamilton, are issues you face in regular corporate jobs, right? I mean, you go and somebody says something, you interpret it something else, and then you're like, oh, what happened? It just doesn't get broadcast to the world, and you don't have, a billion odd people listening in. It just happens that it's a human to human interaction, and you wonder, could they not fix that? Okay, you can't fix the car, but why is it that every race, every session, both drivers are surprised with what their race engineering teams are telling them, and so on. So, I mean, I would still say yes, a great talent in the car, single lap pace, yes. But does he have what it takes to help Ferrari get out of that rut from a
But
technical inputs, etc. point of view? Doesn't seem like it.
if that's the case, Kunal, but they are not even listening to a seven-time champion that they brought in part to give that said feedback, right? So I hear your criticism of Charles. Maybe he's not the kind of vocal leader that Max is, or maybe he doesn't just have, the sheer killer instinct type of attitude that can spread around and get a team focused in a way that Red Bull has. But in reality, it seems like Ferrari are immune to any kind of feedback, because one of the reasons that John Elkann made his comments pre-Brazil was because of the fact that it's Lewis Hamilton that was giving a lot of criticism, and he didn't like it. I'm sure it's not him necessarily, but it's also people behind the scene. I mean, you've been high level executive in the team. I'm sure that there are conversations going behind the scenes where they're looking at Lewis side-eyed and saying, well, this guy can't put it in Q3 in most of these races, and here we are to take feedback from him. So I don't see how a Charles Leclerc, a Ferrari driver, that has come under so much emotional circumstance. I mean, we all know everything that Jules Bianchi, and then even him replacing Raikkonen was sort of controversial in some ways, right? I don't know how you can expect him to give any of that feedback and for them to take it, right? I don't know. I can't seem to square that a little bit.
And let me add some points to you. Leclerc's manager is Nicolas Tort, one of the most politically connected, powerful managers in the paddock. So if Leclerc is still not able to fix it, I go back to your earlier point, Ammar. He needs to stop being a Ferrari fan and look out for what could be next for him in Formula One. 8 seasons will be 2026, and I think a lot of drivers will be up to change teams should their teams not hit the right kind of performances.
Yeah, I think that. No wonder we're hearing about the Aston Martin rumors, but it's high time that he did that, because I would agree with you in that the Ferrari issues are not fixable. I mean, there are champions that have come through and gone like they would have been rookies that came and gone at Red Bull. That's how it's felt like. I mean, they've essentially ruined the last half of Hall of Famer seasons, right? Vettel, you could add it there. I mean, Alonso, and so I'm not sure that Ferrari are going to be on that path. And I think the first few races of next season will be really telling if they've actually been able to fix it, because once again, they stopped developing the car much earlier than many definitely the top contenders, and that spells doomsday in my mind. So yeah, Shez, I'll turn it over to you.
Oh no, sorry, I think they ran out of credits, didn't they? But yeah, I think Leclerc is the Robert Kubica of our day. If he ever got into a car that was worthy of him, everyone would lie down. That is your number 5. I still can't believe it. Okay. The next one is actually 3 and 4 together, which some of our viewers might find appropriate. But I think we're probably going to have to argue a little bit to put them in the correct order, and that is Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. So let me have a little look at who put who where. So Ammar, you put Norris 3rd, and Kunal, you put Norris 4th. I put him 5th. Okay, so maybe I should argue. I should argue this one.
I mean, the world champion is not getting any credit from you, is he? He's not even making the podium.
Yeah, look, I think the key thing here is why I think Norris should come below Oscar Piastri, and I don't think Kunal's the person to argue with, because he did the same thing.
Yeah. Wow.
So maybe, Ammar, you should tell me why Norris should beat Piastri in our ranking.
I mean, I have in the time that I've gotten to know both of you, I have confirmed one thing, that you're both Oscar Piastri fans. I mean, Kunal, we had you at the beginning of the season, and you picked Piastri, right? And then you came on and defended, and then Shez and I have been going at it the whole year. I would have put Piastri above Norris, except for the way he closed the season. I thought that Norris ended the season and I'm not even talking about his sort of comeback, but the last 3-4 races, right? It was not his fault that they got disqualified in Vegas. Yes, you can argue that he gave up the race lead to Max at the first corner, but starting on that side, the dirty side of the grid, no one actually gained positions there, right? Maybe someone did way far behind, but essentially that was going to be a little bit of a tough sell, right? But I think Lando did a very good job in keeping himself in the game. One of the most telling things about Lando was when he did this press conference by himself at the end of Abu Dhabi, and he did it for like 30 minutes. Kunal, you might have been there, might have
Yeah.
caught some. I mean, he spoke at length about the psychology, the personal stuff that went behind the scenes in terms of how he went back and, for example, after Zandvoort, he actually doubled his efforts in trying to improve and trying to get to his best spot with the car. He debunked a lot of the sort of the mythology around, like, these things get in my head and I tend to be too transparent or speak my mind, and that's held up as a sign of weakness. So I thought he carried himself very well. His best race arguably was the last race of the season because, he did exactly what he needed to do. He let Piastri through. I mean, that's now a given. Everyone has said that. Even McLaren have admitted that that was sort of orchestrated. I know you won't agree, but he did what he had to. So I don't know how you cannot give him credit for the fact that he won the championship. He defended a continuously developing Red Bull and a Max Verstappen, a four-time champion nonetheless, right? The only thing I would argue, I'm sure you would bring it up, is that he has not shown us that in sort of wheel-to-wheel combat, he can come out up front. And I think that's probably the reason I'm going to guess you guys put him down there. But Kunal, what do you think?
Yeah,
Why did you put,
Kunal, tell him our way's wrong.
That's all he wants to hear.
Well, for me, Lando is actually, the imperfect world champion. And why do I say that? Is we've been following Formula One for several decades now. And what are the kind of world champions we've got? We've got these world champions who look unbreakable, right, from the inside and the outside. They look it, even if that may not be true. We've got world champions who've had a fast car and have learned to dominate. Look at Max, look at Sebastian, look at Michael, look at Lewis, look at all of them. And you are able to sort of put them in that alpha male category where they were those, bulldogs of the paddock. Lando Norris is not the bulldog or the paddock. He's like a chihuahua if you were to do a comparison or something, right? He's like the cute little boy, very honest, very transparent, and I like that he's embracing his weaknesses, working hard on them, converting them into strengths, and I think that's inspiring for a lot of people, right? Everyone faces this, whether you're in Formula One or not, whether you're competing or not, day-to-day life, we all face it. It's about how you settle yourself into a rhythm, okay? And my reason, yes, while I'm praised him, I I still find it extremely fishy the way his rise happened, but at the same time, it brought about the fall in Oscar Piastri. Okay. And tell me one fan who believes that papaya rules were actually not in favor of of
That guy.
Lando Norris.
That guy.
And I'll in fact put the question the other way. If McLaren would have backed Oscar Piastri early in the season because of the very fact that he had a sizable lead, maybe Piastri would have wrapped up the title way before Abu Dhabi as well. And McLaren was so stressed they cancelled all media interviews. Okay, I really pulled all the strings I could to speak to Alessandro Aluni Bravi, who was the head of the driver development program, and I sent questions. I said, I do not want to talk about Oscar and Lando. I want to talk about the future. And finally, after several hours of wait, they said, fine. You don't want to talk about the world championship you're fighting. You're talking about the future. No problem. They didn't do themselves any favors, if you were to ask me. And not am I saying they should have backed PS3, right? I love the fact McLaren were equal, whatever. But I think in a lot of ways, Oscar in the end just gave up, thinking whatever happens, they're going to, they're going to get do something to get Lando back in front of me in some way. I know my video's gone while I'm
Yeah.
talking, but I'm working on getting it
Yeah,
right.
and while you
Scale.
do that, Kunal,
Ammar did that on
Yeah,
purpose.
while you do that, I just want to push back because based on what you just said, I could make the same argument for Piastri because he has essentially given. I mean, if you're saying that McLaren should have backed him earlier and he would have won, then I would argue that he is not a in your alpha category of champions either. I mean, that would be taking something away from them. I don't know why we need to do the reductive act of taking something. Look, McLaren had the best car. They developed the best car. Red Bull didn't come at it this season. Ferrari failed. I mean, this is not their fault that they had that. And while I agree with you that papaya rules have had unintended consequences, and yes, you could be absolutely right that Lando would have been their boy because he has been with the team for 6-7 years. He has been their driver through and through. I would hope that Ferrari would have considered the same thing if it were Charles Leclerc too, because these are human elements that it's hard to it's easy to say yes we're going to play it down the line, but in reality there's always some level of bias in this. But I don't understand why you're holding that up against Lando because he did come back and do much better. And look, Monaco was bad. I agree. That shouldn't have happened. But what explains Baku? What explains, the Austin? What explains all of that? It doesn't Mexico. Like that, all of these things are like just, I don't know how to explain that. How could he fall off of that? And Kunal, I would just say this. Piastri himself said that he had some learning to do from a technical standpoint. So I'll rest my case there a little bit.
No, no, he is still learning. I mean, I would say he had, a world championship car in his third season. Well, you could get a world championship car in your first season, and you may never have it again in your life. So you got to be ready when it comes. So what explains Baku is I would say the Monza hangover is what explains, for me at least, and I think Piastri himself said this, right? That he was surprised at what happened in Monza. I think the Monza hangover just stayed. If you read Mark Webber's biography, and I actually decided to take it up while the season was on, just to see if there are any similarities, because there were similarities, right? And Mark actually spoke that one of the most uh, what do you say, the demotivating factors, right, for a driver is when he is not given the tools to do what he does best, which is drive fast and score all the points he can. Okay, and when you just extrapolate that to Piastri's situation, you look at Silverstone. Suddenly FIA says, "Oops, you're too close to the safety car. You're being unpredictable." You know, what was Hungary? Everyone was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Two stop versus one stop. It's like everyone was okay with McLaren switching strategies in Abu Dhabi because it benefited Lando Norris. Okay, that Oscar being on the hard prevented Max from backing people up, right? But everyone was also okay with the same strategy being applied in Hungary because hey, it's true McLaren got the win, and too bad Oscar didn't. But some of the other races, were there situations where Oscar was not allowed to choose another strategy? Were there races when he was not allowed to extend or go further? What I mean is this whole fairness is great, but let's remember a few things. Zach Brown is commercially involved in Lando's career.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Adam Norris, and these are all public things. It's nothing that I'm stating. And by no means am I saying these are biases in the team's operations. But Zach saying, McLaren or Red Bull owning two teams is actually not sporting fairness, right? Th- What about sporting fairness when the team boss is also commercially managing the world champion? What about the fact that there was a story where Adam Norris has actually had given 44 million pounds to McLaren when they were down in the dumps as a business? Could those have impacted any of these decisions that they were made? And talking of budget caps in Canada, McLaren specifically brought a suspension component to help Lando settle in to that McLaren more. Were there similar situations? We'll never know this. Were there similar situations that Oscar needed help with when he was slow in Cota and Mexico and whatever that they just couldn't? And just psychologically, I sort of understand that if every time I'm doing something, I'm always told, no, you got to wait till this guy, is
Yeah.
first, and we got to be fair.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a psychology. Maybe McLaren and Papaya rules broke Oscar at a certain point. And then I don't buy this whole, low grip surface thing. It's not that suddenly Austin was the only first track there was low grip at, right? I know that Saudi Arabia is low grip. I know China is low grip as well. So there is, hence I started this whole monologue with saying it was fishy for me how Lando suddenly went quick, and at the same time there was a drop in Oscar. And I still remember always that yes, it's a sport, but for those who are calling the shots, it's a business first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we've known this throughout time, right? I mean, one of the things we give Max a lot of credit for is his sheer dominance, but essentially it's a one-person team that's campaigning for wins. No, Red Bull doesn't back any other driver in part because of that, right? So I agree that, I agree that McLaren could have done this better. I just didn't feel like I wanted to hold this against Norris because he also he's had an amazing career. He was close to winning his first race in Sochi 21, right? Or and that was rain soaked, and he had all of that. He had a chance to win in Monza a few years later, but then at that time Daniel Ricciardo was favored for the win too. So I also feel like we can sort of go back and do that, right? I just think that again, as a season, if you look at where Lando started and he struggled throughout, and again, I for one really appreciate a driver being candid, wearing his heart on his sleeve, being willing to call himself out in public. I think that's a sign of strength. Many people believe that you have to be the Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton style of like, no, don't share anything, just keep everything in. So I felt that at the end of the day, either McLaren driver would have been deserving. It would have been a disaster for McLaren if they wouldn't have. They were 2 points away from that. So no wonder, Kunal, to your point, they just decided at that point, like, we cannot have this happen. Like, Papaya rules is over, man. This is all we can. And then also, Oscar didn't qualify high enough for that to happen too. So I think in the end, Lando, for me, did enough, but for you guys, doesn't look like he did.
No, I see. At the end of the day, history books will always reflect that it was Lando Norris. I've said this on my pod as well. We've got to accept whoever gets the highest points after Abu Dhabi and then actually goes to the FIA Gala is the world champion. It just doesn't seem the perfect way of doing it. There is no perfect way of doing it. It just seemed like a lot of people had to come in and help Lando win it. Okay.
Yep.
But again, we've seen, Checo Perez do his bit trying to help Max Verstappen win his first.
Again, exactly.
Let's settle this with which I'm sure you all are going to agree with is what will Lando now unlock now that he's got his first? He seemed like somebody who didn't enjoy the pressure at all. And I remember reading the stat that Lando had the perfect starts only when Max was not alongside him on the front row.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So I'm hoping to see what Lando does here on, and can he take it up in a way that he's top 3, top 2 for us next year.
So I believe he will. I mean, one of the things I argued coming into the season is I thought that Lando would be best positioned to win the championship if McLaren had the car we thought it did at the end of last year, and they carried that over, right? Because I think that having all of those battles with Max taught him a lot. He alluded to the fact that he learned a lot from that. Yes, he hasn't been able to pull one off against Max when they share the same row. I do believe that you'll see that next year because I think there's something to be said about this weight sort of going off your shoulders, particularly if, let's say, the season had ended in a disaster, right? Neither of them won, neither McLaren driver. Then there would have been so much pressure. It would have felt like agony and pain. I mean, winning in some of these circumstances, Kunal, you know this, it's more relief, right? But the pain of losing is far greater than the joy of winning. So that pain would have carried over. I think that you're going to see a more relaxed Lando Norris. I think these guys believe that when they win one, everything else is bonus. I believe that when they say that, and I'm sure they want more. It doesn't mean that they don't want more. But I think you'll see a much more relaxed Lando. I expect him to be more erratic. I expect him to make more mistakes, but I also expect him to give exactly what you're saying, Kunal, which is I can beat Max off the line. I can do what Oscar did to him in Saudi, and I can defend against what Max did to Oscar in Imola, right? Like, I mean, those things I think you'll see a little bit more of. I'm not sure they'll all end up well, but I think that'll make for good drama, assuming they're still in the same spot.
Okay, all right.
He's gonna pull me back.
Well, no, I'm not going to pull anyone back. We have to come up with an order.
Yes, let's do.
But look, just if, for what it's worth, Ammar, I agree with you. I love the monologues at the end of the season. A different kind of world champion. I'm here for it. Somebody that talks about mental health, great. Someone that's a bit more sensitive, I don't mind any of that. But ultimately, you have to show your goods on track. And there was too much of this season where Lando bottled it off the line when Max was alongside him. As soon as he's not alongside him, great. We have Mexico and we have Brazil. As soon as he's back again, we have Las Vegas. It's like he learned nothing across the entirety of the season.
Oh my God.
That's a problem for me. The only reason that Oscar is in the conversation to be behind him is because when Oscar dropped off, he dropped off much further than Lando did, arguably to the detriment of his championship bid. And that's the only argument that I can see that allows you to put Piastri behind. But all of the advantages that I think Lando had were not afforded to Oscar Piastri. And that is why I struggle to put Lando ahead. When you've got a legacy within a team, you've got incumbency within a team, you've got the team saying, you want a new tweak to your front suspension? Yeah, Lando, you got it, man. Then to make that much of a meal of the first 2/3 of the season, something's not quite right. And in answer to your question, Ammar, about what he's going to be like next season, if Max is nowhere near, he's going to be Sebastian Vettel. He's basically going to start at the front of every Grand Prix and drive off into the distance. And we're all going to be going, wow, he's a 4-time world champ. But there'll always be that little bit of, but he can't overtake, but he can only win from the front of the grid. And all of that is nonsense, right? When it comes to Sebastian Vettel, it is total nonsense, because we saw at Ferrari that in the first half of his career, that actually he was very good, but he was always tainted a little bit with that. And I feel like that's what Lando's going to have to contend with. Maybe he won't care. Maybe having 5 world championships will actually be enough. And I'm sure it will be. But
Are you going to do the unthinkable, which is put a world champion behind his teammate driver? Is that what you're doing?
Well, it's not me that's doing it. This is our rankings. Ammar, you had Piastri 5th behind Norris. Both Kunal and I had Piastri ahead of Norris. I can't think of any other fairer way to order them other than to put Piastri.
There you go. Papaya rules not favoring Lando here, is it?
There you go. There you go. And I would argue that this counts more. Let's move on to number 2. And we're going to have some more arguments. I don't know how we're going to argue more than we have already, and we're already running out of time. At number,
I get a feeling. I get a feeling number 1 and number 2, with all the ones covered off, it's probably we've got a tie on who we've picked as number 1 and number 2.
We do not have a tie. We do not have a tie, but it is they're probably the drivers you think you're going to see. So at number 2 we have George Russell, and Ammar, I am coming to you, my friend. Both Kunal and I had Russell in our top 3. You had him 4th behind Lando Norris. Before you give your answer, remember what I said about Charles Leclerc, right? You put him 2nd in your ranking, yeah, with 0 wins and 7 podiums. Yeah. George Russell, wait, got 2 wins. He got 9 podiums. He beat his teammate by 0.5%. That's double the difference between Leclerc and Hamilton. And his average start position was 4 to Leclerc's 5. Why was Russell so low? Why is it? I'm not even going to say it. I think I know why. Go for it. Tell me.
I mean, so my rationale was that I was more set on the 4, and then came Russell. I mean, Russell's had a great season, but it wasn't. I mean, tell me if you had an aha moment there where you're like, okay, this guy is it. I mean, he won at tracks we expected him to win, right? I mean, that it's not. Which one did
Singapore?
Did he not?
You expected him to
Come
win
on,
Singapore.
man. I mean, anyone that's really good, because I remember the last time he was in the wall. He was trying to chase Lando and he was in the wall. So I mean, that's a good thing.
How did you expect him to win after
hang
he was
on.
in the wall the last time he was there?
Kunal's not going to come back. You guys just got done telling me that the wins don't matter because there are circumstances and this and that. I'm doing the same thing here again. It's not that Russell had a bad season compared to the other guys. it's hard to put anyone behind, anyone ahead of the who we're going to put in number one. There's going to be no argument there. But I mean, you have a world champion. You had the other guy that you guys just defended right now at McLaren, and then Charles Leclerc. For me, I mean, that's the only conflict. We covered a lot of ground there, so we don't have to really go back. But I think again, the way I contextualize this is that I expected Mercedes to have this kind of season. I expected them to have a couple of wins. I expected them to be in the mix for podiums. And Russell did exactly that. There is no shining glory in beating a rookie. I mean, Charles Leclerc beat the hell out of a 7-time champion. So that's the context. It's different, Shez. It's apples and oranges. But tell me that I'm wrong.
Kunal, please tell him he's wrong. So the only reason I'm asking you to wade in again and do the heavy lifting is, now you put Russell second, I put him third.
Okay. See?
So yeah, I put him behind Leclerc. I didn't put him behind everyone, other than Piastri, who you really don't seem to like. But Kunal, why does George Russell deserve to be second in your ranking?
If I can just pick on what Ammar said, that George Russell beat his rookie teammate, right? Let's expand on that. I believe he also beat Max Verstappen to that Mercedes seat for 2026.
Nice.
He actually was out of a contract. He had to prove that he could deliver the goods. Mercedes had already sided with Kimi Antonelli, right? The only person who needed to make sure that he performs on track. It wouldn't have mattered whether the Mercedes had a package to win or not. But the performances he pulled off, I would say, were very, very worthy of a world champion. In fact, even more so than all the performances he had alongside Lewis Hamilton. So he wasn't as championship worthy along Hamilton, if I was to put it as that. But I think this season was like, oh wow, if he gets a championship winning car, he could go up against Max in the press conferences, which is important. It's a part of the gameplay. He could go up against Max in the car as well. And I was seriously, I'm not a big George Russell fan. I'll be honest. And I mean, what I mean is he's a great driver, but till date, I never thought that he was going to be a contender for the title against, the likes of a Max if he had the car. But he proved in 2025 with the pressure, with Toto openly courting Max. Okay, he did enough not just to get 26, but also, 27 and a whatever contract that would sort of come his way. So for me, it was circumstances where he sort of pulled his weight through. Yes, his performances may have come at a time when Red Bull was all over the place, right? But somebody has to pick up the pick up the spoils when they come, and he put himself in that position to pick it up. Not a Leclerc, not an Antonelli, definitely not a Hamilton, and hence I would say he was the second best driver of the season for me.
Can I wade in on this one? Look, so
Please.
I found 2 and 3 really difficult, right? I think separating Leclerc and Russell this season has obviously been easier for you two, but for me, I found it next to impossible. But I think the thing that clinched it for me is that it's what Kunal said earlier about Leclerc not really leading the team. Now, whether or not that's because Ferrari just don't let him do that and give him the goods to do that, or whether it's inherent in Leclerc, I don't know. But the result is still the same. That for 6-7 seasons now, he's been at Ferrari, and they teeter on the edge of success, but they never actually get there. With George Russell, it felt like this season he genuinely came out the shadow of Lewis Hamilton,
Mm-hmm.
and that team was his. Like, forget all of the stuff that happened in the middle of the season where Toto was openly courting another driver for that seat. Forget that for a second, because despite that, George was still putting in the results. He was pumping in results when nobody else was around, while Lando and Oscar were tripping over themselves to lose that championship as quickly as they possibly could. George was just banging in the results. and he was making a mockery of his phenom teammate. Your words, Ammar, not mine. So to have George anywhere else, I think, anyway, outside the top three, I think is just absolutely insane. But where do you see his ultimate potential? Because that's the thing, right? That's what we're talking about here. I think he can win a championship. I think you put him in a car equal to Leclerc, or maybe a bit better than the driver we've got at number one. And you know what? He'll bring home the championship. But he is much more of a thinker. If you're gonna call Leclerc the acrobatic Gilles Villeneuve of the grid, you kind of have to call Russell the current Prost of the grid, because he takes a, I don't see that as a pejorative. I know you do, but it's not a pejorative. Um, Look, this is a driver that seeks out their weaknesses, doesn't shout about them in the way that a Leclerc or a Norris does, or an Isaac Hadjar who's fast becoming that person now, and finds ways to make things better. He focuses in on the things that have gone well and makes them better, amplifies them within the team. And you can argue that Mercedes were in a similar position to where Ferrari have been in the ground effect era, and actually George has pulled them out of that this season. He's made them, in essence, a force to be reckoned with. When the results have been there to be had, it's not been Kimi Antonelli that's got them, and it's not been Charles Leclerc, unfortunately, that's been there to get them. It's been George Russell, and that has to count, I think, for a lot. And it's not that he's slow, even. Like, they call him Mr. Saturday for a reason. Some of his qualifying performances are unbelievable in a car that really shouldn't be where it is. They had an entire middle of the season where they got the rear suspension of that Mercedes completely wrong. They had to go backwards, and he still was pumping in the results. So for me, like, I don't think you can put him lower than second or third. As it happens, we put him second. I think we're going to have to move on, because there is an absolute gulf between George Russell and the driver that finished first. 30-point difference. And of course, there's no prizes for guessing who came first. It was, of course,
Really? Yuki.
Lewis Hamilton. Lewis had no, come on, I'm just kidding. Before people come through, Max Verstappen. Look, everyone,
Hamilton fans.
like all of us, put him first. He made 75 points, more than it was the maximum you could get. Kunal, I'm going to start with you. Why are we wrong? Why should Max Verstappen not be first? Is there any argument you could possibly give?
No, there
No,
is no
perfect,
argument. There
easy.
is, I mean, I'd love to have any of the viewers, who think Max shouldn't be first writing in, and I think 2025 will definitely be remembered for Max's resurrection, his red mist moments, I would say he's become Saint Max Verstappen this season. And you can say that about Lewis. Suddenly you win so much and you're just on the brink of, your first loss, and you're like, wow, remember to enjoy this moment, boys. That's what Sebastian Vettel said as well. So something about becoming multiple world champions, in Formula One brings you closer to sainthood, I would say. You start preaching, and you start seeing life very differently, and that's the Max we saw. I mean, just uh, yesterday, I bumped into someone at the club, and the person came and spoke to me in Hindi. Oh, Max ne aur kuch kyun nahi kiya? And basically a translation for why did Max not do something else in Abu Dhabi? And firstly, I was impressed that somebody actually spoke in Hindi, and that was, the good work that the broadcaster here is doing,
That's right.
expanding it into regional languages. But what I loved was everyone was expecting Max to be dirty in Abu Dhabi. They were wondering what can he do wheel to wheel to make sure he's ahead of Lando and Lando's fallen back, whatever. But he accepted defeat very gracefully, right? Very graciously. And he said, I was never in the fight, so it's not about losing by 2 points. I was just never in the fight. McLaren started pulling me in the fight by getting things wrong. And I think, the very fact that Red Bull went through what they did with Horner and then Marco and GP, and there are a lot more stories that are going to come out in the off season, right, about Red Bull Racing. Lots of changes. For Max to still be in there, pumping in those performances, leading the team the way he did with the turnaround and all of that, I'm like, oh, wow. Give me a reason why he shouldn't be there, because I definitely don't have one.
Okay, Ammar, tell me this. Is this
I
Max's?
mean,
Oh, no, go on. You were going to say something.
no, go
Okay.
ahead, go ahead,
Well, I was
finish.
going to
Yeah.
ask you a question, which is this
Yeah.
is this Max's best season?
I don't. I can't do that. No, I mean, I agree with Kunal in that there is no way you could put Max below anyone in terms of how you rank this season. I really appreciate, to Kunal's point, his level of maturity. I feel like you, again, having had multiple championships gives you a little bit of perspective. It widens your horizon, so to speak, in how you look at things and how you sort of go about things. And I think Abu Dhabi was again very telling in his regard, in that he knew. And I think there was a silly question asked by a journalist too, right? And he was like, is this all because you lost those points in Barcelona? And he was like, well, actually, I was never sort of really in it. I think he mentioned something to the effect of McLaren gave me some early Christmas presents, right? And you can put that down to papaya rules, their DSQ in Vegas. I think from a point standpoint, I think the 2 point margin is sort of, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, because yes, it's 2 points on paper, but in reality, it was probably way more than that. Had that DSQ not happened, the Abu Dhabi would have been a boring race from a championship contention standpoint, right? I think the only argument you could make against Max being number one is the fact that Red Bull kept developing the car far longer than McLaren didn't. So if that pace had held steady, it's conceivable that Red Bull would not have finished in the top three as a constructors. It's also conceivable that Max would have not finished in the top three. Russell probably would have been ahead on the merits of his consistent performances too, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think we need to do that. I think what Max showed is that he can really pull a team together, and that's what it's all about. I mean, it's the Red Bull Verstappen's really, I mean, in essence, right? That second driver, it'll be interesting to see what Hajar is able to do next to him. Seems like the type of driver that could give him a run of money. But we've also said that in the past, so who knows what that looks like. I do think, Kunal, to your point, this season cements, for me, Max being at Red Bull, even if they have a tough year next year. And by tough, I mean, probably being in the top three, but not being in real championship contention for the Drivers' Championship. I don't see why he would leave this, because, and we had this discussion earlier in this week with Jake Boxall from the Autosport, right? The whole idea of, we build these narratives around drivers, right? And I think it's hard to underestimate what Red Bull have built around Max, and it seemed to have held up, even though there's been chaos outside of it. So that core structure, man, that's so hard to find somewhere else. And where are you going to find it? Ferrari has issues. Mercedes have their way of going about things. I don't know. I mean, Alpine and Aston Martin, these are all wild cards. We don't know what they're going to look like in the future. But hey, this is Max's team by and large. I don't think he's going anywhere.
But Ammar, I'd argue that actually this season was the last hurrah for Max's Red Bull, right? Like all of the people that were there that brought him in, Helmut Marko gone, Christian Horner gone, Adrian Newey gone, Dietrich Mateschitz. You can argue that's where this all started in 2022 when he passed away. So the team that is there in 2027, as much as Max is saying, oh, I really appreciate the fact that Laurent Mekies is an engineering focused team principal. Actually, this isn't the team that he signed up to in the first place. And it's great to have influence, and it's great to be able to lead your team. I think he's done that brilliantly. But let's not get confused. The reason that Red Bull and Max was as close to winning this championship, and 2 points is what it was, is because of Max. Like the car was developed because Max was pushing them to keep doing it, to the detriment, like potentially, of next season. And the performances he was then pulling out of the car in those circumstances, no one else did it.
Amazing.
And I think this is the thing about Max that I found this season. It wasn't the pure pace, because I think actually there are, say it quietly, but there are other drivers on the grid that in equal machinery might be able to give him a bit of a challenge. It's not that. It's the fact that it doesn't matter whether it's 25 degrees and sunny or minus 20 and snowing, whether the car is an absolute monster or it's about to be run over by the Chihuahua, as Kunal called him. Um, he 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 has the same level, and that level is just beyond what anybody else can pull out. You talked, Amara, about the fact that Oscar struggled over the course of a 24 race season, but that was a 24 race season for everyone. And Max did not buckle, not once. Was there
Yeah,
ever
that's true.
any
Yeah.
doubt that when he turned up at a race, that car wasn't going to do the absolute maximum that that car could possibly do? And that's why for me, that what happened in Abu Dhabi was a glorious failure, right? Ultimately, because he didn't win the world championship, but he
Oof.
seemed happy about that. He seemed content with the fact that it didn't matter that the result was what it was. He had put, he had given the best of himself and got the best possible result over the course of the year. That's what that final radio message was about. Why? Actually, I'm not going to lie. That one felt like deeper to me than what Lando said over the radio towards the end of the season. I just cannot comprehend how if next season if Red Bull have a car anywhere near competitive, anybody else is going to come close to him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's nothing to argue about, really, for a change.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to argue. Can I have anything to add? Take away even?
And I would say, the dichotomy of the season is the driver who had the most poles and the most race wins was not the world champion,
Yeah.
but he was definitely the
Yep.
best driver of the season.
Yep.
And throughout the season, when Max was, going on that 104-point comeback, you know, when last were so many people actually cheering for Max Verstappen to win, right? And of course, they want to do that because everyone loves racing, entertainment, and the comeback, and all of that. Because cut to 2023 and 2024, everyone was like, Max, can you please stop winning? Because you want others to. So I love that he's sort of changed that sentiment. Fans embraced him for who he is. The rookies came out saying Max is like an elder brother to us, and so on. So a different side to Max, a lot more uh, calm, a lot more comfortable, very mature. I think he's got a brilliant team around him that Raymond has put together. Of course, his father, he knows how to wind up the other drivers. But that's what gamesmanship is all about.
Yeah.
That's what playing competitive sport is all about. And I think full marks to Max for winning hearts, even though he didn't win the world championship.
It's a weird thing about Formula One, though, isn't it? That, in 2023, Max was winning every single race by like 20, 30 seconds. And yet this is the season that we're going to remember because I just think, Formula One is nothing without a little bit of adversity. And it's how you sort of survive in that adversity. I think Max kind of showed that this season. Guys, I think we're probably going to have to call it there. I think it's way past your bedtime, Kunal, isn't it?
Me,
Um,
after go and whisper Lululemon to my daughter, that's the magic word that she's made
Ooh.
my
is it? Well,
wife.
that's it's
Yeah,
controversial.
so it's just a random word she chooses every time I'm not putting her to bed or not sleeping with her into bed. So I'll go and
Oh,
whisper something and she'll pretend like she heard it next morning. So why not?
I'm with her. Lululemon is the perfect word to send your child to
it's
sleep with.
perfect.
Yeah, completely. Um, Listen, this is probably going to be, this is the 18th of December today. It's probably going to be the last time we chat about 2025 in this much detail. So I just want to say to both of you, thank you so much. This has been a really, really fun season to cover with both of you. The insight has been incredible. As much as we've argued, it's still been fun. And I hope you guys out there loved it as much as we have making it. Kunal, where can people find you?
I keep tweeting all the time.
Does
So you can find me on Twitter. Of course, there is the Inside Line F1 podcast. And luckily, no official broadcasts for some more weeks. But I can assure you, everyone's preparing. There's a lot changing in 26, especially how you call out things. I think everyone's been saying how difficult it's going to be for drivers and adaptation. It's also going to be difficult for commentators because the kind of racing that we are expecting in Formula One in 2026, it's not how I would say most commentators have grown up to. You know, flat out speed, drivers in sync with the car, extracting the maximum. There could be reasons in 2026 when drivers are not extracting the maximum. So to be able to call that out, and so on. So I mean, I'm curious. I would say a bit worried, not wanting to call it wrong, obviously. But I think Formula One's doing a great job to explain to the fans, much as to us commentators and the likes, about what the challenges and the changes for 2026 are going to be. So, and it's been great to banter with two tired fathers as well on Tired GP. So thank you for having me.
The one thing that
Legend.
Kunal didn't tell you, the reason that he's worried about calling stuff is because fan code have been extended now, haven't they? So Hindi
Yes.
commentary is now going to be here to stay. And congratulations, man! Like I'm really
Yeah,
impressed.
congratulations. Big ups, yeah.
Yeah, really
Yeah, thank you.
huge.
Yeah, 3 more years. So a lot of broadcaster contracts are now till the end of 2028. So I'm lucky I get to do Formula One in 3 languages. There's English, Norwegian, and Hindi.
Wow.
So it's
That's
a lot of fun. And I think it keeps me young, with constant switching of languages. And there have been times on the Norwegian broadcast, I'm like, oops, I was almost going to answer that in Hindi. That would have been a big blooper.
Yep, I mean, I definitely agree. You've kept your hair better than either of us two. Anyway,
yeah.
on that note, I'm going to call it as usual. Please like, please subscribe, please leave us a comment. We'll read every single one. We'll reply to as many as we possibly can, and we will see you guys in the next one.
Thanks, Kunal.
Thank you, guys.